Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott, back again for another episode of the Nolecast. So, Bud, we'll turn our attention to trying to move on from 0-2. Obviously, that starts this weekend in Winston-Salem. We'll give you a decent idea as to what we can expect from Wake this weekend. And before we do, we'll thank our friends Louisiana Hot Sauce. 3 simple ingredients, 1 fantastic product. Whether you're putting it on eggs, popcorn, or whatever else, it is just something that has become a staple in my kitchen and hopefully yours as well. And our friend at Tarpon Cellars, fantastic wine company, fantastic wine people, very much invested fully in both kind of the culture and the whole process in bringing to your table one of the better bottles of wine that you could find. Their Cabernet is particularly exceptional and award-winning. And give them a look if you got a special event coming up or you need a gift of significance for somebody of some kind of certain milestone in their life or whatever else. Give them a look. tarponsellers.com, coupon code Nolecast. And with that, Bud, let's jump into this Wake Forest preview.
Let's do it. I had a couple questions that I guess we need to kind of discuss. Ingram, people want the hot gossip, man. They want to know, did Dante Lucas fight a strength coach? And did Jordan Travis quit the team?
Okay.
That's right. That's the couple questions that we've been getting on Twitter and through email, and a couple on Patreon. Answer here: I actually don't know. Wasn't there. Didn't see it happen or not happen. I don't know. I know he handled it pretty quietly as far as like his announcement wasn't real crazy like or anything, and he's going to go elsewhere. He did officially enter the transfer portal, but that is. Look, he did not play well. We kind of held out hope that he might play well. Clearly just mentally couldn't handle playing. Just given that number of concentration penalties, something else had to be going on there. But it does hurt your depth because I think behind your starters now, you have guys just really physically are not ready to play. And with Schrader out for the year and Lucas off the team and DLT not right and a couple other guys banged,
you're still missing 53. Yeah, I mean, it's a disaster up front. We'll naturally get to it, but concerning, real concerning, particularly at the center spot, in my opinion.
Do you, I tell you what, I went back and listened to some of the comments from Norvell and Dillingham praising Jordan Travis following that Notre Dame game. And I read into those. I think that sometimes coaches use comments through the media. I'm not going to say to keep a kid from transferring because that's not what I mean, but to let the kid know, like, hey, we value you. You're still part of our plans, that type of thing. But look, he practiced this week, so Jordan's not off the team. Yeah. I think he'll probably play some on Saturday.
It's not really my place to speculate on a rumor like that. I'll just say that I have a feeling where both of those pieces of information are coming from, and I wish the best of luck to Dante. It was always, when it was good with Dante, it was real good. And when it was bad, it went really far south. And just a guy who had a hard time finding any kind of midline when it comes to a healthy place for emotions and other things like that to operate. So best of luck to him. Just didn't work out here in the long run.
You want to get into this thing?
Yeah. Let's, all right. So an interesting team in Wake Forest. Certainly you'll probably be well prepared for them, being that it's probably a decent theory that you've spent maybe a little bit too much time preparing for them last week in your install. Even when we're critical of Norvell, we've said that his team and his team of coaches, staff can do a pretty good job of scheming some things up when they get a chance to look at an opponent. And, I fully expect to see that. In no way will it negate what happened last Saturday night, but I do expect a coaching staff, a game plan that's reflecting of a coaching staff that has put some extra attention to this game. As obviously from the beginning of conversation about what 2021 would look like, it was pretty easy to circle this game as important. I'm not sure that we would have known it was quite as important after what transpired the first 2 games.
I agree. So I've watched some Wake Forest, and I have to tell you, they are a hard team to evaluate. There's some things I feel really confident in knowing about them, and we'll tell you all about that. And I'll just be straight up with y'all. Like, there's a lot of things I think we can't know yet. The main reason for some of those things is because of who they've played and what they've shown. And so far, who they've played is quite literally nobody, right? They have not played anybody at all. Jeff Sagarin, you can quibble with his ranking system a little bit. I think it's fair, but he's the only guy I know who incorporates FCS teams into his overall rankings, which is useful for the point that I'm about to make here. Jeff Sagarin has Wake Forest strength of schedule year to date at 214th in the country. Now, this is pretty relevant because there are only 130 FCS or FBS teams, right? That means that Sagarin basically has Wake Forest schedule strength behind an additional 70-something FCS teams. So far, they have played Old Dominion, which I have as a bottom 5 team in the FBS, and I would have as an underdog to a decent number of FCS teams also. I mean, Old Dominion didn't play football last year. Wake Forest played them in their first football game since 2019. And then they also played Norfolk State, which is not great, but not like Savannah State level FCS football team. And they really haven't had to show much. They had fairly, like they were never threatened in those games. They weren't completely dominant victories throughout the entirety of it, but it does make this evaluation and prediction more difficult because there are some guys on their team that I know a lot about who I feel like I have a good handle on, as do you. And then there's some guys like, oh, he's new. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's not. One thing we do know, though, is Dave Clawson is one of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion, as far as getting the most out of his guys. Is he a great recruiter? Could he handle having a really, really big job? Those are all interesting questions, right? People thought Butch Jones could handle a really big job until he got Tennessee. But Clawson, fit-wise at Wake, what they do, he knows how to recruit to that system that they run. I think he meshes with the Wake culture extremely well. The guy's just very hard to beat there. They consistently overperform expectations.
It's very interesting. This will be a tough preview for us from our perspective because you've got an opponent that's really hard to get a feel for, and obviously you've got an opponent, or rather you've got a team from our own domestic point of view that is who knows what the hell you're going to get on Saturday. I mean, it could be a little bit of anything. We'll say that, why don't we start this conversation with the most concerning aspects of it, and then maybe lead to where Florida State may be a little bit more of a rosy picture as far as what the potential outcome may look like. So really concerned along the offensive line, but we mentioned in the get-go there that still had a lot of ambiguity / don't expect to see him playing when it comes to your center, at least the guy that most of the fan base would like to see at center, number 53. Robert Scott, your tackle, left the JSU game. DLT hasn't been the same DLT. Maybe there's some glimmers of hope that he's rounding into a little bit better form, but Lucas is gone, Schrader's injured, or out for the season, as you mentioned, or at least out for the vast majority of the season, unless something different occurs.
It's certainly not an option to play in this one.
No, and won't be until, in my opinion, maybe game 10 or something like that. I mean, if he comes back, it's going to be in the final 15% of your season. What do you expect when it comes to the offensive line? Because for me, this is the hardest thing. I think Florida State's defense matches up relatively well with them, etc. You're a little bit lucky in the injury column when it comes to some of the injuries that Wake has sustained. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. But really, the rest of the conversation doesn't mean a whole lot if Florida State can't come out and put some sort of decent, and I use that word intentionally, decent offensive line together and hopefully make it through this game without sustaining another injury to a group that really can't afford it.
Yeah, like you said, I don't believe Smith is going to play. I don't know if Robert Scott's going to play. I suspect he's kind of game time decision. I don't think Devontae Taylor's going to make a miraculous progression in 1 week. Maybe he gets in a little bit better shape, having be able to play more now. And but like we said in the offseason, it was one of our fears, right? How ready is he to be back what he was? Because last year he was a good player for you. This year, not so much so far. And I think that is 100% attributable to him trying to get back from injury as soon as possible, and not being able to get that normal summer lifting and conditioning because he was rehabbing. It's a major concern for me. I'll just start off right off the bat. It is. I legitimately think you can win this game. I don't know that I'm going to pick them to win this game, but I think you actually there are scenarios here in which you do win. Wake is better than you physically at a good number of spots, but not every spot. You are better than Wake physically at some spots for sure. They are a far more experienced team than you are. They've played together. They've played a lot more football together than you have. They have a whole lot of super seniors on this team, whereas you have like very few super seniors, almost nobody who's played together for more than a year or two, and your most veteran players on this Florida State squad are transfers who have played 2 games together, and some of whom arrived over the summer. So continuity-wise, big-time advantage for Wake. Not having to show their hand yet, huge advantage for Wake. FSU had to try to pull out all the stops to beat Notre Dame because it found itself in that game when I wasn't really sure they were going to be in that game, and they were, to their credit. They also had to try to do some stuff last week and failed, obviously, to beat Jacksonville State. But that's a major concern for sure. I think, look, Wake they have some good cover guys on the outside. I think their run defense is not great, but, okay. The one tackle on the inside is not bad. So I can find his name here. Excuse me. 11. So they're 11 and FSU's 11 are both pretty good up front. His name is Fox. That's a concern of mine. FSU's interior pass protection this year has been poor, to be kind, I think. And that is definitely a concern. But FSU, I think, needs to find a way, if it wants to win this game, to score in the upper 20s, if not in the 30s. And is it crazy to think they can do that? They literally did that 2 weeks ago against Notre Dame. They were very reliant on the explosive play here. Wake is not truly a team that's given up a ton of explosive plays this year. They've given up, they give up 1 30-yard run to Old Dominion. But then again, it's also Old Dominion and Norfolk State. So I don't know how explosive Wake's Wake's defense can be, or how good it can be at limiting explosiveness. Because I don't know they've played anybody that should have any explosive plays. It's not as if FSU was giving up explosive plays on the regular to Jacksonville State until the end when the bomb literally went off, right? That was pretty explosive. But this makes it a difficult evaluation. I do think that they have to find a way to get the pass game going. This is kind of a duh analysis. That's probably more McKenzie. And I think you need to use Jordan, and I think you need to run Jordan and see if you can outgap these guys, make them tackle on the edges, and see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be. I don't see any way that Florida State is really. I don't want to say competitive, but I think if you're going to win this game, you've got to use 2 quarterbacks, and you have to roll Travis out in a role in which he can have some success. A little bit concerned as to if I don't know. There just seems to be, and I'm not trying to hint at anything here when I say this. It just seems to be some kind of, whether you want to label it a distraction or schism or whatever kind of term you want to use. But you've got to get.
He was happy about his use in last game.
Yeah, I can understand. I mean, I can understand seeing 2 series and then not seeing the field again after
in a loss,
supposedly winning the position.
You beat by 30 last year, right?
Yeah, and you won the position in camp. I don't see how that translates, but another conversation for another time. So you've got to get him in the right headspace and in a physical place to which he can contribute. So I don't Wake has a pretty decent defense, a decent enough defense to not let your wide receivers do a whole lot. I am concerned for Florida State if their game plan is to come out and lean heavily on McKenzie Milton and any type of passing game, whether that be quick timing or trying to create opportunity down the field or whatever it may be. I just don't know that Florida State's in a place to really lean heavily on that. And I hope that's something that you don't see on Saturday, and it's some little bit more of a mixed attack.
Let me ask you a question here. You're done with Parchment, right?
I would give him, for every 10
staff is
snaps
done
he
too?
got on Saturday, I'd give him 3. I'll put it that way. Until I see
same.
something else.
Do you think the staff will do that?
I think they're getting there, to be honest with you. I mean, there's some pretty concerning tape on Parchment. If he doesn't get in like an immediate free release at the line, it's not a lesson in effort from the wide receiver position. I'll put it that way. We'll see. Maybe Ontario Wilson helps slightly at wide receiver with him coming back and having a few more numbers in the rotation. But there's just some questions about personnel in general. I know this is kind of a fanish comment to make, but I think he took 5 shots of 20 yards or more down the field against Jacksonville State, and 4 of them were to Keyshawn Helton, if not all 5. I'm interested that seems to be our deep play threat at wide receiver. I wouldn't necessarily think of him as such. So you got to find some opportunities and maybe create some one-on-one matchups with Malik. And it's always a dangerous proposition to lean on a freshman wide receiver, but that is clear, far and away your most talented and gifted option. And then, whatever the mystery is with Josh Burrell, that was a real big component of your offense against Notre Dame, particularly in kind of that nub set that you lined up in and had him act almost as a tight end, as a wide receiver lead blocker. So look to see Burrell back involved in the game plan, hopefully, and just a true freshman, but can be a pretty big contributor to what you're trying to do from a philosophical standpoint.
But I'm glad you brought that up. So I would like to see them use more tight ends and more compressed sets in this game. I think you can run some picks and rubs here. I'm interested in how Wake Forest plays some of the crack alert stuff that they do when they're going to crack down. That could work with their toss game. If you guys, to understand what I'm talking about, if you watched Ohio State against Oregon, I thought Oregon did some nice stuff with some of the 3x1 sets that they used. Ohio State's a real heavy cover 3, cover 1 team, and they don't have very many answers. Now, Wake has more answers as far as schematically than Ohio State does. I don't know what the hell Ohio State is doing. Well, I do. I just don't know why the hell they're doing it like they are. But I would be interested to see how Wake handles some of these compressed formations. I'd be interested to see how Wake handles multiple tight end sets. Maybe this is the game where Jordan Wilson helps you out as a blocker, able to run the ball, control it. Wake is definitely still a tempo team. They're not quite as fast as they were in years past, but I'll be interested to watch FSU's tempo here. But maybe you can run the ball on these guys. They have 2 redshirt sophomores at defensive end. Again, I'm saying maybe because I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be like because they've played 2 pretty crappy teams. And yeah, FSU played a crappy team and lost to it, but they also played by far the best team that anybody in this game has played and almost won that game. They have to find a way to create some explosive plays here because I don't believe this offense can sustain drives. Although maybe if they can have fewer penalties now that Lucas is out of the lineup, that should help them. I mean, Kenny Dillingham, I thought, was a bit dismissive of some of the other issues on offense in his press conferences this week, and he referred to the penalties a lot. But he's not wrong that Dante Lucas committed like 1 million penalties. So
yeah, a lot of MA
season already
and penalty talk. And I don't need my offense coordinator to stand up there and say, oh, well, when it's 2nd and 13 against an FCS team, then we're just, blown out of the water and can't really find success at that point. But I'm not a real big fan of Zapruder filming coordinator press conferences in general, but a couple things that interesting comments from Kenny. But well, I don't know, man. This is I mentioned at the beginning, this is a tough preview. It's a tough preview to really get a feel because, like you said, Wake has played 2 little sisters of the poor, and Florida State has been as inconsistent as they have, and Wake has been what I can only imagine is intentionally vanilla. I mean, they're not going to show you a whole lot of anything on either side of the ball, and Florida State has to try to figure out what they can do to be the best team possible. One team that we always know is the best people in their field are the good people at Hamilton Home Loans. Bud has been fortunate enough to work with them twice now, and
a legendary team. Yes,
I know flirted with trying to do it a 3rd time even. So tough to find a sponsor with more buy-in to the people that he works with than that of Bud, but they're great people, and it's easy to see why we've had as much success with them as we have.
I used them twice. 200 Nolecast listeners have used them as well. Just incredibly excited to continue working with these guys. Legendary team, 844 FSU Loan, 844 FSU Loan. Give Shannon and Chad a call. It was a tough week on the group text. I'm not gonna lie. Those guys just bleed garnet gold, man. And I'm Chad's trying to talk. He's like, I think there's a way they can get to a bowl still. What if they do this? What if they do that? I'm like, and what if they manage to win 3? Like that'd be a nice step up from kind of where my headspace is at, on Monday. I mean, I've come off that a little bit, but man, it's you can tell those guys live and die with it, as do so many of our listeners, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the success that we do, and we appreciate that. Give them a shout out for FSU Loan, knowledge of the industry, great rates, customer service. That's what it's all about. All right. You want to go to the side of the ball that I feel like I actually have a better handle on now?
Better handle on, and probably the more enjoyable conversation for those of a Florida State leaning audience, which obviously is the vast majority of you out there. Wake, they still run, similar to what you can remember over the past couple of years. The mesh point is not as long or prolonged and kind of exaggerated as it was 2 years. They started to get out of that a little bit last year, but it's still going to look pretty familiar. I mean, it is a like kind of a hyper extended mesh point. You diffuse a little bit of the ability of defensive ends to be super explosive and get up the line of scrimmage and be impactful, as they do have to read for a second, depending on what you ask of them. But I'll tell you what, man, if there's anybody that can, I don't want to say single-handedly win this game for Florida State, but if there's anybody that's going to make a decent amount of money, who has a decent amount of tape played in April with decent B-roll music over it of him making tackles for losses that are completely disrupting an offense, this is a game that's kind of made for Fabian Lovett. I mean, if you can
money game,
if you can reset the line of scrimmage and can get constant penetration against this, doesn't matter how long your mesh point is, he can damn near single-handedly blow up this offense.
There are multiple ways I can see Wake Forest winning this game. There is one way that I can see FSU winning this game, and that is kicking Wake Forest ass at the point of attack with FSU's defensive line, which has been about the only consistent thing to the positive about this FSU team all year. That's the only way I can see them winning, is they have to go out there and they have to take advantage of Wake Forest's offensive line, which is experienced, but not as experienced as it was coming out of spring camp, right? As we know, Javonte Nash, their starting right tackle, was lost for the year in summer workouts. Not an insignificant thing, right? The guy that's going to be blocking Jermaine Johnson or Keir Thomas is a redshirt sophomore, 303-pounder, Devontae Gordon. PFF grade so far, fine. Okay, not a liability. Also, Old Dominion and Norfolk State. I don't think he's faced anybody on those two teams like a Jermaine Johnson, and probably not like a Keir Thomas. I don't think he's faced anybody in practice like those guys. Again, we're saying again, if FSU can win this game, the only path to victory, I think, for them is them whipping Wake Forest up front right here. Like that's got to be it. I cannot see them winning a total shootout with Wake Forest, given the offensive line situation. This has got to be the path. And I'm not going to dismiss this as a possibility, because all those guys up front, even if they're down about what this team looks like right now, they're still playing for checks, and they have a lot of incentive to win those one-on-one matchups. I'm sure Keir Thomas would love to go make a practice squad somewhere and continue to play. I'm sure Jermaine Johnson would try to play his way from a third rounder to second, or hell, if he keeps dominating, maybe a first rounder. I may be way wrong about that. Fabian Lovett can continue to make some money and improve his stock. That's the way it has to be. I have some weird numbers about Wake, man. They scored points in their games. I'll give them that. Their success rate has been fairly good, but their explosive plays have not been there at all. They only have 7 plays of 20-plus yards on the year. And for a team that's outscored their opponents by like 1 billion, you wouldn't think that's the case. But they have not been able to hit those explosives on the season. And I have a couple theories as to why. the first one, is not really in FSU's favor, but I think Wake has been incredibly vanilla. I don't think they've shown a damn thing. And FSU certainly has had to show how it's going to play a lot of different looks because it's been in 2 dogfights. Wake has been into, tiptoe into the tulips, right? But also they did lose a pretty important receiver in the preseason as well. Donovan Green was another guy. He was their I'm not going to say he was their best receiver, but he was kind of the 1B to Roberson's 1A, and we'll talk about Roberson in a second.
He may be the best get that Clawson's got on the recruiting trail. I mean, this is a 4-star prospect out of North Carolina, pretty talented.
And a very productive year last year.
Yeah, really came on last year and is a decent thing. Florida State's got their hands full with the one wide receiver we're about to talk about. But, Wake had 2 pretty significant losses in the right tackle. And again, with Donovan Green, really would have given them a pretty different look when it comes to some of what they try to do in the passing game.
So they still have Roberson. They have the 6'5" kid who is kind of a matchup problem. They will throw him jump balls. He's fairly decent. A.T. Perry, excuse me, the redshirt freshman. But this offense looks different, as you said, man. If they had Donovan Green, now I think you probably can and most likely should give a whole lot of attention to Jakari Roberson and force somebody else on Wake Forest to beat you. Maybe they will. Survey says so far this year with this FSU team that they absolutely will, but there's hope that they don't, right? Another thing here, which is interesting, Wake Forest has not run the ball all that well this year. Like they're not busting these explosive runs. They had one against Old Dominion, and their second longest run in that game was 10 yards. They had one they popped for 48, Other than that, a 10-yarder. I guess they had a 16-yarder very late in the game. Excuse me. But I don't know. Is it a red flag that they've not been explosive yet, or are they just so vanilla right now and it maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe I am. It's possible. I'm trying to find a path to victory here. Limiting explosiveness or continuing to not allow Wake to be explosive would be one of those paths.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, only 7 plays north of 20, only 2 passing plays north of 20 against Old Dominion. It's just a team that, again, maybe they're just sandbagging. Maybe they know that they can go through the first 2 games 2-0 and put in their FSU install during those 2 weeks. And but still, I mean, it comes a point where regardless of what you're doing against those 2 teams, you would expect an offense to maybe have a little bit more explosives. What Florida State tries to do will be something that I'm excited about. I really like the defensive line matchup. One thing that I'm not as excited about is, and I'm not trying to knock a kid, but obviously Kalen DeLoach gets the targeting call at the end of the Jacksonville State, or at least in the fourth quarter of the Jacksonville State game. He's out for the first 2 quarters, most likely going to significantly increase the snaps for one Steven Dix. Obviously, Dix is physically an exceptionally gifted individual, still working on, trying to read the game and diagnose what's in front of him. We talk about some of the success that Jordan Travis has had this year, and most of it's come on kind of predetermined things. I almost need you to invert that for Steven Dix in this game. I like maybe what Dix can become in time, but he's not there as far as an individual that can kind of read, react, keep himself out of giving away bad angles, etc. I'd love to see you blitz him.
I'd
love to see you do anything where he knows what he's going to do before the ball snapped. I don't want Steven Dix trying to diagnose this offense. So if he's got to flare out and have coverage in the flat with a predetermined zone, whatever it may be, I would draw up a little bit of a unique defense the first 2 quarters to try to get you through this.
Yeah, I mean, DeLoach is your best cover linebacker, largely by far. If Dix has to be the guy in there, that does present some challenges for you for sure. I mean, Lundy's another option, Gainer's another option. This is a game you can play more your nickel, and maybe you play more your dime here. I would probably consider doing that in this one. And basically, if you play more your dime, you have more speed to cover some of the RPO stuff. Again, for folks at home, if you're new to the Nolecast, we don't use RPO in the incorrect way. RPO does not mean quarterback runs it or throws it. It means he hands it off or throws it for the most part. So if if your front can neutralize the run game, you can play more smaller personnel on the back end. It's almost like having a crazy good center in basketball, and you surround him with 4 guard types, and you let the center eat, and then you make everybody else cover you with the spacing on the floor there, to use a cross sport analogy. So that'll be interesting to me to see what happens. How do they play that? They have to limit those explosive plays. Wake Forest is a team that I think that'll be a real key for me, because I don't think they're a team that is crazy physical in the red zone, and in that compressed space. FSU is a fairly good sized defense. Like, Lovett's a good sized guy. Kier Thomas is not tiny. Jermaine Johnson is pretty big. They're
Briggs, Cooper,
Lundy.
Yeah.
All their corners have some pretty good size to them. That doesn't mean they've played good red zone defense so far this year, but in theory, I mean, look, guys, we got to try to find paths to victory somewhere without just being, total BS artists here. I'm being honest with you. I feel like there is a path to victory here. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that's kind of how I see it needing to happen. Don't lose to Roberson, kind of thing. Make somebody else beat you.
Yeah.
And don't just have the kind of mental brain farts that allow the freebie explosives, especially when they haven't really hit them in the first 2 games.
Most definitely. We'll get to our listener question here, but before we do, we'll thank our friend Matt Lewis at Congruity. Congruity, is experiencing your business optimized, and whether it be that they're a big help on payroll, as they are for the vast majority of their customers. That's kind of the core of their business, but they certainly offer a wide variety of services. And we would encourage you to reach out to Matt just to see how you guys could best partner if you think that they could better your business. Matt's been great for us. We're fortunate to work with him for a second year here, and we would ask that you give him 10 minutes, just see if it's a good fit from a relationship standpoint and what they can do to maximize what you're doing on the business front. So congruityhr.com is the website. You can reach out to Matt via email at knowles@congruityhr.com.
All right. So we're doing predictions. We're doing listener questions.
Let's hit the one listener question. Dave, we kind of answered this organically, but Dave said, I thought about the performance against JSU, and it's safe to say that they probably didn't do as much of an install this week, and we're probably working on Wake. Dave, I agree. I've heard teams often do this versus lesser opponents. Could this have potentially been a reason for the performance that we saw? Does this give us a better shot against Wake?
Well, I have to say yes. I think, yeah, it does. I mean, I don't think it had to go as badly as it did last week. I think that the coaching staff mishandled the game. I think there were a number of players who didn't take last week seriously enough as far as their prep, whether that's meeting prep or studying on the iPad prep or practice prep. And you saw some guys not start last week who then came in after a couple series.
I found Jarvis Brownlee's comments interesting. Did you hear what he said? He said, we've had our problems haven't just been on the field, they've been off the field as well for our position group. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
We talked about it last. Yeah, for sure. I mean, taking it seriously, coming in the right headspace is important. Obviously, he's gone through quite a bit, as he discussed in that interview with the passing of his godfather. But I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't. I will say, from a betting perspective, I'm not really looking to take FSU in the points. I'm not really looking to lay the points of Wake Forest. If I'm going to bet something here, I would seriously consider going FSU money line, or I would go Wake Forest on one of the alternate spreads, like Wake by 14, and get like 4-1 on your money for that. Because I do think there's a quit factor in this team. I don't think there's a great togetherness of this team. It was one of our concerns that we had in the preseason. Everybody was talking about culture. And I feel like we were kind of on an island among the podcasts saying, look, they're trying to install their culture. The culture is better than it was, but this is still a team of mercenaries, basically. That's why you took all these transfers, because you were trying to avoid a disaster season. But these guys aren't super tight. A lot of they don't know each other. They didn't get recruited together. They didn't come up through the system together. They're 1-year rentals, or in some cases 2. Rentals sounds bad, but basically like that's a baseball, kind of trade deadline term, right? You just got these guys. They're here for a year. They're not putting down roots into the culture for the most part. So I don't know that they stick together if they get down early in this game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh, most certainly. I mean, I have the similar concerns. I also think that Wake's style of offense can kind of wear you down, and if you start to slip or get frustrated, the dam can break on you. So I'm a little bit worried about that, but I don't know if I'm being real optimistic about this game because internally I'm scared of what the trajectory of this program is if you go 0-3. I mean, obviously, part of the optimism is having to do directly with some of the matchups we just talked about. But I do think you come out and you play hard, and I think that I'm going to take Florida State like 24-23, bud. I know that you think you may have to score a little bit more to win this, and you may damn well be right. But I think this is a low-scoring game where you can get enough out of it, and maybe you need to kick a 42-yarder with 3 seconds left or something like that. But I think Florida State wins in a exceptionally close game. And none of us forget last Saturday night, but maybe you have some kind of footing to try to catch yourself and move on with the 2021 season. Before you give your prediction, we will just thank Madison Social and For the Table Restaurant Group, as we always do, with us since the first Nolecast to be recorded. And we're fortunate to work with them, and we're very excited to see as many of you out for the Louisville game as possible.
At Township. It's going to be
Township,
awesome. We got our own private patio out there.
We obviously
great.
Love both locations, but when it comes to an event and getting some space, Township is exceptional. We'll be right out there. You can't miss us front of the restaurant on the porch there, and hope to see as many of you guys as possible, and ladies.
Absolutely. Okay. I don't know what the hell is going to happen here. One thing I've noticed is that all 5 touchdowns Wake had against Old Dominion, or all 5 offensive touchdowns, rather, because they had a kick return touchdown as well. They were all on drives of less than 60 yards. A lot of that was Old Dominion's offense couldn't do anything. They were pretty incompetent, and then Wake would have a bit of a short field there. I'm going to go 31-23 Wake. But here's the thing. I'm not actually betting Wake. And with that prediction, I should be, because obviously the spread is 5, and I just predicted Wake to win by 8. And that's significantly under the total as well. Total is 62 and a half, and I just gave out a total of 54. I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't think FSU's defensive line is going to get abused. But I don't know who the hell is going to play for FSU on the offensive line. And that's a big deal. If you get some of those backups in there, I think they get blown out. Like if Robert Scott doesn't play, DLT doesn't look good, I think they'll lose by 20 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Because the drop off now, like we are in the real danger zone of the drop off from, I know in the preseason, I think Kenny Dillingham said that they feel like they have 7 or 8 guys who can play. Well, Schrader's out. Lucas is out. Smith. I mean, if Scott's out, that goes from 7 or 8 to 4. You need 5. That's a problem. But I could see them winning as long if the defensive line really steps up and whips Wake up front. It's possible. I don't know what's going to happen here. That I think we kind of laid out the path to victory, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right, y'all. We'll 3:30 game. We should have an instant reaction up for you Saturday night. Hopefully, it's a positive one, and we'll just be here regardless. This is certainly a very interesting point in the program, and hopefully you can go up to North Carolina, get a win, and everybody can look forward to brighter days and wash some of the disappointment of the first 2 weeks off. But we'll see. Certainly appreciate you listening to us, watching, however you consume the Nolecast. Know that it's greatly appreciated. If you can like a tweet, if you can like a video, if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, we ask that you do so. Whatever you can do to support the podcast, know that Bud and I greatly appreciate it. And since day one, this podcast has been successful because of the incredible amount of support that you, the listener, have given us. So thank you very much for that. And we'll be back for a instant reaction podcast for you here in the next 48 hours or so.